2 years on your own as a one-man army?
That was longer than 2 years. I did it for 4 years as a one-man army. There were people in my industry who didn't want us to succeed because they considered us so unorthodox. They would call venues and tell them not to host me.
How did you survive 3 years with that sort of attitude?
Oh, mate, I'm a very resilient person.
What would you tell that Simran 4 years ago, though?
Make sure you really understand what that audience is, because when you understand the audience, you understand the value.
For everyone listening, Simran is the CEO and founder of Format, award-winning event production and creative agency. A lot of different facets which we'll get into, which I'm very curious about. Also the board member of the Scottish Games Network and has over 8 years of marketing and production experience. So I'd love to hear more about what Format actually is, because I think from first glance, it might look like just events, but you do a lot more than just events, right? So Could you just tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, of course. I'm the CEO of the Format Group, and there are 3 arms to our business. So Format Group is the parent company. We have Format GG, which is our events arm of the business that deals with a lot of the events that we have. So our Ultimate Gaming Festival that people mostly know us for, our B2B industry mixers and our talking panel events that we coordinate and organise. And we have even more events that we're adding to the events roster in 2025. We've then got Format Forge, which is our creative agency side, where we've worked with a number of creative and digital clients over the years to provide creative and marketing services, as well as events management services to events that might be seeking a bit of help, whether that's from a strategic planning standpoint or executing their own events. We do everything from trailers, social content, paid media, the whole marketing shebang, really, what we do in-house with our team. And then we have Format Collection, which is our physical retail products consisting of the likes of energy drinks, clothing, and other physical products that I'm not talking about just yet that are coming out very, very soon.
Wow. So that's a lot. So that's why I really wanted to talk to you, because I want to understand how you're managing everything, because it looks like they all kind of, from the outside anyway, it's like a well-oiled machine. So it would be very curious to hear kind of how you've effectively done that. So I want to jump in at the start with the kind of events. I would love to know more about that. So Format GG is described as a revolution for gamers and non-gamers. So it'd be good to hear about the origin story here, like what inspired to start this and like how have you made it into a reality?
Yeah, of course. I was practically born with a controller in my hand. Like, I've always loved video games and the interactive entertainment industry as a whole. I just love the immersion that video games provide you. The better the music and the better in film in terms of how they transport the user into the world itself. With music and film, you're just a passenger, whereas with video games, you're in the driver's seat. And that's what I've always loved about them, is just that interactivity and personal relatableness that we find with these products. And I chose a traditional games industry background, went to university, studied game design, got the whole first class honours, that shebang, set up my own game studio. But whilst I was in my first year at university, I realised that there was a severe lack of industry events in the city. In particular, there was just, Manchester's one of the most creative cities in the whole world, and in my opinion, the best city in the world. And it has just got barely any games industry events, and it kind of saddened me, really. So I just decided that I was going to host a one-off meetup for gamers and gaming enthusiasts. I literally just chucked 50 quid on Facebook ads. I was expecting like 8 people to turn up to things. Bear in mind, this is in the golden age of Facebook ads, but I had no marketing experience back then. So you got a lot more bang for your buck with £50 than you do today. So I was expecting about 8 people to turn up. We literally turned up with a Jenga set, a board game, and a Nintendo SNES. And we had about 100 people turn up, which really blew our mind. We literally packed out this small bar in Manchester's northern quarter with just like 100 people. And I say this was just meant to be a one-off event because I was bored and I just wanted to meet fellow gamers. And then the manager came up to me at the bar and he was literally like, you can do another event here, right? You can do another event. Please do another event. Please bring all this money into my venue on a Wednesday night again. Please, thank you. So we decided to do another event the month after. Then that got 110 people. We did another event on the third month. And we started getting small increments of just going up. And by the fourth event, we started getting local game studios coming to us, asking can they showcase their games off. So we had a bunch of indie developers and just game enthusiasts, about 150 people. And it started to like turn sort of this like underground, dingy sort of like underground bar sort of aesthetic. If you've ever been to the likes of NQ64 or anything like that in the past, it was kind of like that before that even existed effectively. And I was a huge nightlife lover as a uni student. I used to just go out clubbing all the time, absolutely loved it. And my biggest business inspiration of all time for the events arm of the business was the Warehouse Project created by Sacha Lord. It's, anyone who doesn't know, it's the biggest, in my opinion, it's the best rave in the whole world. Like, what they've created is absolutely phenomenal. I remember going to the Warehouse Project and just thinking, why does this not exist for video games? Why has no one taken the most adaptable medium on the planet and thrown it into nightlife culture. Like, it's the two complement each other so well. Like, everyone wants their own tribe of people, whether that's introverts, gamers, it's a naturally introverted industry, the games industry.
Yeah.
And then I quickly answered my own question as to why no one had done this when I started out doing it, is that it turned out they weren't a big fan of raves. So I had to overcome a huge culture of implementing the things that people love into a culture that's quite foreign for them, because nightclubs aren't catered to introverted people. They're not catered towards gamers. So we effectively created that nightlife movement and revolution for the gaming community. And as we continue to do this over monthly consistent events, it was practically me doing all this. So I was a one-man army doing this for like 2 years, just at the initial starting point of it. And we just getting bigger developers. At one point, we had EA, Sony, and Ubisoft all under the same room in this tiny little bar in Manchester, showcasing like Shadow of the Colossus, Mario versus Rabbids, like big IPs. And then we basically just decided to take it up a notch in 2018 and host a massive event in Manchester's Printworks. And it was kind of the event that kickstarted me. I'd done it for about 2.5 years as like this sort of like hobby, you could call it. Like, I was passionate about it and it was bringing some money in, but it wasn't like loads amount. It was still a hobby at this point. And we hosted a one-off event in 2018 and it got 1,000 people. There was a queue just queuing outside of the venue, going across streets. We disrupted traffic at one point, like just being able to cause gridlocks. And it was just a phenomenal experience. And from that moment on, I knew we had something special. So from that point on, I basically took on the challenge of building a nightlife revolution for the games industry. And in the nearly 7 years that have followed that journey now since then, it'll be 7 years in September, we've become Europe's biggest games industry nightlife movement. And that's just the events arm of the business. And that's kind of where it came from. It came from a place of wanting to create a nightlife movement for the games industry and create a place where gamers can come together, whether you're a developer, content creator, or a consumer, and actually have that one-to-one interaction with the creators behind your favorite products that you don't get at a lot of mainstream consumer events today. Because I feel like mainstream events have forgotten the purpose that they were founded for, which is to bring people together. It's very commercialized, it's very capitalistic, and it's designed to kind of go against the consumer. Whereas we're not about that. We're about bringing together the creative and consumer on the equal level, whilst also having a fun time and putting fun back in games industry events that's kind of been lost along the way over the last decade.
Oh, I'm sold. I want to go. I want to go party now. That's
can you
crazy.
tell I've rehearsed that line quite a few times?
No, it was clearly off the cuff. No, that's really cool. So been doing that. So 2 years on your own as a one-man army. There's so many ways I can take this.
Oh, mate, that was longer than 2 years. I did it for 4 years as a one-man army.
Wow.
And because as I say, I funded the whole thing out of my own pocket. It took us 3 years just to get one sponsor for our events, because we were a very unorthodox event. Like, there were people in my industry who didn't want us to succeed because they considered us so unorthodox. They would call venues and tell them not to host me because they really didn't want this nightlife movement.
How did you survive 3 years with that sort of attitude against?
Oh, mate, I'm a very resilient person. I come from a council estate, a very low-income backcold family. Like, I learned, and I've often found in my life, after speaking to multiple entrepreneurs throughout history and my 28 years on this earth, is that I've often found the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that have come from humble or low-income backgrounds, because they've learned how to innovate with limited resources. Whereas when you look at brands that have more resources, they actually tend to create less innovation, because the strain on their resources is there to force them to basically innovate a little bit more. Obviously, that's on a situation-by-situation basis, but that's kind of a common denominator that I've kind of gathered from speaking to multiple entrepreneurs and business owners over the last decade. And a lot of it just comes from the fact that if you're determined to do something, you'll make it work. Like, you can make it work ultimately. And I was pumping my own money into a job alongside my uni study. So I was literally taking whatever money I had left from my job after paying my rent and everything and putting it straight into the business just to be able to get things up and going. Whether that was just like, I cannot even tell you. It took us 1 year to buy a roller banner because of like when I say I was a student starting, so like I had no graphic design skills. I didn't have any events management skills. I taught myself all of this stuff along the way. They don't teach this stuff in game design courses. No. They teach you how to be an artist, a programmer, or they teach you at the most to be a level designer. And it's kind of rigid. So a lot of this stuff was self-taught. And I was going against a very traditional industry at the time, all on my own. Eventually, we started to bring more revenues in the terms of sponsorships, ticket sales, exhibitor fees, and I was able to bring on a whole team of people to help me. I had some very generous volunteers in the early stages that did take some of that weight off me on the nights, but a lot of it for 4 years was just me as a one-man army against a traditional industry. And here we are now, the industry loves us.
Yeah, that's super cool. Like, I actually dabbled in this. I want to start an event business someday. So at Evolution, my previous company, it was recruitment company, I did meetups. So I invited everyone who's been on the podcast before and plus ones. And it was like, leadership meetup. And they always did really well in the sense, like, we had 20 people, then 30 people, but then ended up doing one, it was last year in Stockholm. They had 300 people come in. And just like you said, everyone's like, there's so much money sloshing around here. We have an amazing city, but there's no like event to bring people together that isn't, like you said, super capitalistic. Because when you go to some, I guess, networking events, you can feel it. Like, it feels like, okay, this is a B2B networking event. Like, you just have that sort of vibe. There's some which are more cozy, but I think what you just described sounds very much like the type of event I would love to go to. Because you can get business done, but you just have that nice atmosphere of, this isn't trying to squeeze every penny out.
Yeah, exactly. And we've catered to all audiences. We've got B2B events, so we've got dedicated network events. That's our reformat industry mixers where, but even then that's done in a more casual atmosphere where we've got some very generous sponsors, very big names in the industry who attend this thing. But it's not a sales pitch. Like, they go on stage for a few minutes to say who they are. If you want to come chat to me, here I am. Because you're paying to get access to people in a very private, cozy setting effectively. And that's the approach I went with it. Like, don't get me wrong, we're a business. We have to make money, and we make good money from obviously some elements of it. But I'm not prepared to turn us into every other event. We've seen it now in the last year where events that have grown so big and capitalistic, they've closed down. Not everything is peachy behind the curtain. And often I find that events who have to become so capitalistic, it's kind of a warning sign, effectively, that you're having to capitalize your event on every single avenue. You're losing track of what your original end goal was. You'll understand this as an entrepreneur and a business owner. You can never lose track of what that original goal is, because otherwise it bleeds into all the work that you produce, and you produce a little mess. And effectively that boils down to your customers, your clients, whoever that is that you're trying to pinpoint with your business. And from an event standpoint, the best events don't try and sell you stuff like, you've paid for a ticket. You should immediately be getting the experience of that event the minute you've paid a ticket. I see an event as an experience, whereas a lot of events have seen them as a product. And I'm not here to sell you stuff. As soon as you walk into format, the base ticket gets you everything. There's a few stalls that you can buy clothing, you can buy energy drinks, stuff like that if you want to, but it's not a requirement of you to be able to enjoy the event. Whereas a lot of events have tied in the experience to physical purchasing products, which in a cost of living crisis and when things have never been high, it's kind of a really bad business decision to be doing that. You should be offering the base experience for the initial asking price that you've asked for your audiences. And that should reflect in your ticket prices.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to get into the listener here who's trying to potentially put on their own event, because I feel like you've done it for 4 years before you, from the sound of it, like started generating real revenue. So if someone has the vision of wanting to start to do an events, what would you tell that Simran 4 years ago that please don't do it this, maybe do something else differently here? Like, if you're just trying to put in your first gaming event, for example, what would you tell them?
Yeah, don't wait 4 years to start capitalizing on it. That's one thing I would say. Like, there's an event recently that I've watched over like the last year and a half, and they're doing really well so far. They're still quite small, but they're getting sponsorships already. And I mentor this person quite a lot and I say, amazing, you're doing a lot better than I was already doing 4 years ago. And they're like, I look up to you. I want to have what you have. And it's like, listen, you're already starting off better than I did, because I didn't understand any of this stuff. I didn't understand business. I didn't understand like how to put a pitch deck together, because no one taught me this stuff. And a lot of that I would say is that if you're going to get into this, really do research into the type of audiences that you want to target, that you want to have an event, whether you're a recruiter, games industry, film, music, whatever your event is that you're trying to host, make sure you really understand what that audience is. Because when you understand the audience, you understand the value that you bring to yourself and to other people. And then from that, you need to start putting decks together, like really value yourself, get a good website. Please, this isn't even one piece of advice. Like, this is multiple pieces of advice, but I'm going to bundle it. First of all, please get a good website. Everyone's always like, oh, you don't need websites. Yes, you do. Like, you 100% need a website. Like, I take pride in the format website. It looks incredible. I know it looks incredible because I sat there meticulously planning out every detail of it, because I'm into brand design, which ties me into my next point. Your brand is everything. How you project yourself to the world. I know people who don't have successful businesses, but their branding is on point, and people think they're doing really well because the brand is successful. And when you first actually start off with events, you've really got to own it. Like, you are a one-person army, or whoever you're in business with. Like, it's literally you. You are the brand. You'll have to carry it. So getting good branding in place, getting a website in place that really communicates what your event is, getting good photography, good videography. And it might be that, you have to put some money aside for that sort of stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be amazing. I'm aware that the format videography and photography is amazing, but over the years, like, it wasn't always like super incredible. Like, we worked within our means. So start off and work within your means. Don't overspend, because I can understand a lot of people in initial beginnings overspend on these type of events for a little return. But yeah, getting a good website, understanding your key audiences, and start reaching out to people, get sponsorships to get together, because a lot of these big events, they generally have three main sources of revenue, sometimes only one, but typically it tends to be sponsorships, ticket sales, and maybe vendor like fees, depending on obviously what type of event it is. And you've got to think about your outgoings as well and what it's going to cost to run these events. That's why I say, when you're first starting off, keep it small with big ambitions. Like, try and test the water, because when you're first starting, you can trial a lot of different things and then really understand that audience base, and then from that point build upon that. So yeah, please get good logos in place. Like, please just get some. Think about actual brand design. Think about your core 5 brand values and what you represent, because it would shock you how many entrepreneurs and business owners and events people I speak to. I'm like, what are your core brand values? What are your 5 values? And what are brand values? I'm like, how can you build a business without understanding what your brand fundamentally stands? And I can list all 5 formats right now: community, heritage, innovation, diversity, and also community. There are 5 brand values, and what we founded on as a business. That's what we do, and being able to really understand your SEO. So that was a long-winded answer, basically, in a nutshell. There's a bit of a practical element in there, and then there's a bit of a knowledge-based answer in there. Really understand who your audiences are, what your brand is, and then start getting those practical elements into place. Get a website, start getting decks put together, and start doing outreach. And you might not get it straight off the bat. Very few events get any form of funding on their first event, but you just got to constantly keep outreaching to people. I constantly network 24/7, even as an experienced event organizer, because you have to. So you have to be willing to really do it. Events is a lifestyle. It is not a job. Like, you have to want it. So if you're truly serious about it, you have to want it.
Yeah. No, I can
Does that
resonate
answer?
with that.
I understand that was a long-winded answer then.
Well, I was going to potentially challenge you on the website thing a little bit, because if you were starting on a website straight away, in my head, what if you do a test event, and then that changes your whole idea of like what events you want to do?
Yep.
So I'm guessing when you were doing your event business, you probably didn't have a website on the first event, but you then got the website later. So I was wondering, like, when is it a right time to actually start investing in those type of things?
Yeah, of course. I say, and I would agree with you on that point. Like, this is going to sound like very primitive how we started. Ours was literally just a Facebook event. We created an event and then clicked promote through Meta Business Suite. So obviously it depends. It's up to you.
That could be your starting point, right?
That could be your starting point. But one thing I will say is that you're going to want a centralized location that everyone can go to, understand what the event is, understand what it is. And it might be you grow that business out over time. Maybe a website isn't that, but I would always say having some sort of centralized location where you'll be able to do that is really key. And ticket pages are fine, but ticket pages are very limiting in what they can be. That's why I always opt for a website. And there's plenty of free website options out there you can do. Like, you don't need to go fancy. You don't have to build custom builds like what we've done. Like, you can get on Wix, and that'll teach you some creative aspects as well, because when you initially start off, you're going to be everything. You're going to be the graphic designer. You're going to be the programmer. You're going to be the event organizer. You're going to wear so many different hats. I think just getting your head into that mindset early on is going to be fundamental for the challenges that you'll face moving forward. And it'll just give you an understanding about how events really do conduct themselves online. Like, all the successful events have websites, all of them, because most of the time that's what people go through. People look for a website.
So I want to touch on the event business for a few more minutes, because
you
have so many different sides of your business. So the event business, you mentioned the website is a big source of, I guess, traffic. So I wonder, what is the lead flow of attendees to your events? Do most people come from the website? Is it more from kind of advertising? Like, how do people find out about an event?
Yes, so from it, our website traffic comes from kind of 2 main directions. So from the website perspective, we either get people get direct searches. So a lot of the time they'll see like ads for it, they'll see a content creator sharing news of the event, but then they want to do a bit of independent research. So they might see their favorite influencer sharing, and they'll go, right, I actually want to know. So that direct link could be from a link that someone has shared on their social channels, or it could be them manually search it. Then there's obviously the paid ad side of it, which is Instagram, Facebook, that sort of thing that people click onto it. That generally tends to lead directly to our ticket pages. But the reason why I heavily emphasize a website is because it becomes a collection point of data that you as an event organizer can collect. is that when you take things to ticket pages, that obviously you can get some information from a ticket page. Like we're an exclusivity partner with Skiddle, and we can get access to certain things through that. But websites, if you do them right and really do your Google Analytics correctly, you do the back end side of it, work with someone to do that, it can give you age, it can give you gender, it can tell you how long people are spending on certain pages. And you can use that as a metric to optimize your journey as an event organizer. And that's why I really emphasize websites, because they just help you understand what areas people do. Ultimately, people search for tickets. Like on Format, first thing do, people want to know where the tickets are. So they go straight for there. But then the biggest thing is people want to learn more about the event. That's our second most popular page. So that's why I kind of really highlight it, because it's not just a place for you to sell tickets. It's a place for you to get crucial audience data that you can build up and use that for any marketing campaigns that you use for your events.
Yeah. I did a party in Cyprus, and I was trying to be very organized. I invested a bunch of money, got a venue, and I was tracking everyone on Folk. It's like a CRM. So it's like, oh, I'm going to collect their data there, and then I can message them about the next event. So that got me thinking, there's got to be a better way to do like CRM management for events. Is it any different to how companies traditionally do CRM? Like, do you track all your attendees and then put them on newsletter? Like, how do you manage your data when it comes to like your customers?
Yeah, so the one benefit of the Format Group is because we've got so many avenues of the business, from clients, product, we can really draw data in from so many things. So people who say buy something on the Format Collection website, they get an opt-in where they can learn about the events as well. So they might buy some merchandise, but most of the time people who are already buying the merchandise know what the event is anyway, but they can opt in. So you've got that other side of it. Our clients as well, they can sign up to it and learn more about our ongoing activities, and vice versa as well. Our attendees can learn about our client side of things as well. So amongst those attendees might be a creative studio that's looking for some work to be done. So we've got multiple avenues that you can do it, but it varies from business to business, because obviously certain businesses have more revenue than others, some not. So depending on how much money you have, you can invest really deep into it. So I know some companies that have insane CRM experts that are working on this stuff, and they even build custom systems for them to be able to do that. So there are default methodologies of approach to it. Like a lot of people use the same tools. Like I say, we use Google Analytics, because Google Analytics is really, really helpful for us in terms of, obviously, a lot of that is connected into all the other merchandise websites that we have, which is connected to our merch site, our agency site. It's connected to so many different moving components that it just gives us that centralized location where we can look at all this stuff. But companies all fundamentally use a lot of the same tools. It's just that they have more resources available, if that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you are first starting out and you're building this, like, is there something that you should really keep in mind when it comes to your CRM? Like, is there anything that you did now that you wish you started doing at the start?
Yeah, so as I say, I was a huge novice of this, so I'm not going to claim to be the ultimate CRM expert. There are people in the Format team who understand the implementation of it a lot more. I was super basic in my understanding of it, so I was using a lot of website analytics tools just to help me track where people were getting lost, where people were not like clicking on it, where low engagement was. I was using our social media tools to see what content was resonating with people at the time. And then I was just using, I emphasize, very basic Google Analytics, just to be able to actually figure out like how this stuff works fundamentally from that side of it. And then as we continue to grow and grow, I was able to lend the expertise of people who understand this stuff a little bit more. But when you're first starting out and you're wanting to get to a place, lean on people for advice. Like, speak to someone who understands this. Like, advice costs nothing at the end of the day, unless you want it like full time. But there's a lot more resources that are out there now than when I first started. There's entire YouTube courses that you can sign up for. There's digital courses on CRM that you can do there now as well. I'd probably benefit from doing one of them if I had the time. But there's so many more resources out there now, because as this creative sector has grown so much in the last 15 years, so has the demand for those skill sets within it. So there's more people teaching you this stuff as well. So really lean on the resources that are out there. Like, I learned a good chunk of stuff off YouTube when I first started this business, and it'll teach you so much out there now that it's at your hand, that it's at your disposal. It's never been more easy to build a business, but you need to it's never been more easy to build a business, but it's never been harder to become a successful business. And to do that, you have to be willing to put graft in, and you have to understand the people that you're trying to target fundamentally.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that statement. I think it's very easy to get started, but I think because it's so easy, maybe people think it will be easy to win. But if you just, like you say, put in that graft, it's inevitable, because a lot of people don't. So if you do, you just win. Like, as simple as that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a bit of piece of advice I give is, and this is something you might even actually disagree with me on, like graft is great. And, I've been at the opposite end where I've had a successful business and I helped run an unsuccessful business that sadly didn't work out. Graft sometimes isn't enough. Like, you can work really hard on something and it still might not work out, but it'll teach you ultimate lessons from that. And at points you are going to fail throughout business. And it's when you learn from those failures and carry them into your successes, that's how you build the real meaningful successes. So don't beat yourself up if your graph doesn't work out. You just pick yourself up, you learn from it, you tie that into the next thing.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Like, you win or you learn. And I think the learn part, if you're doing something and you put in 110% of your effort in, good example here is recruitment. I went 6 months where I didn't do a single placement. Well, that's like full-time hours, and I've generated zero revenue. Internally, I could think, oh, I'm useless. But when I zoom out, the next 2 months, I did 5 placements, which was worth loads. So sometimes it is just the season you're in. It could be a timing thing. But then sometimes it could be something that is more strategy based. Like you say, it might be like the opportunity vehicle that you're in. It might be just you're too early, or it's just not the right time. Maybe the competition is way too good right now. I'm not saying these are excuses to kind of say, oh, this is why you failed. But sometimes that is the case. Like, my business is doing very well now, but I realize it's because I've had a lot of success grafting with recruitment, which is business development. I've done a lot of writing, and I've done 200 guests on podcasts, so I can use that as a lead gen tool. And I love going to conferences. Like, I've got all these infinity stones, which make ghostwriting and personal branding useful. But if I started this 2 years ago, I'd be screwed, but I'm still the same person. So I think, like you said, like, you can just hopefully separate the fact that, yes, success, but if you learned, then it will be a stepping stone to a future, hopefully much bigger success. So yeah, definitely not worth beating yourself much up. However, now that I'm saying that, during that time where it was an unsuccessful business, I wonder, could you have realized sooner? And like, is there a question we should be asking ourselves to realize that? Like, if I'm putting graft and it's not getting anywhere, how do I know that's due to not my lack of graft, but like a strategy thing? Like, could you tell that story?
Yeah, so you've hit the nail on the head with that last word, strategy. So a big thing for us is, we were listening to a lot of traditional voices in the industry, but one thing we would have benefited from is a real business mentor who had done exactly what it is that we'd done. We were a game studio, like we worked on a game studio, and don't get me wrong, the business wasn't a complete failure. Like, I just class it as that because ultimately it just didn't earn enough revenue to survive long term. We did it for 3 years, and we made a successful product. Like, I'm still very proud of the product that we made. We made a video game. And, it did relatively okay. Like, it did good. Like, it kept the business afloat for about another year and a half, which,
more than most.
Yeah, more than most, exactly. And we lasted longer than most startups don't even last the first 6 months. Whereas
in
we
games,
lasted,
it's like, in games, it's like 10% actually survive or like make money on that game.
Yeah, exactly. And we made 2 games, and we worked on a few freelance projects as a work for hire studio as well. So I don't consider it a complete failure, but ultimately the business had to close down. So technically, depending on what your perspective is, you could class it as a failure, or you could just see it as a learning experience, depending on that. But the big thing I think we would have benefited from, we were a young team when we started. Started it straight out of university, which obviously, again, traditional game design courses, we broke the mold a little bit. Like, we wanted to run businesses. We didn't want to be put in boxes where we were just being taught to be sent to a game studio and go work in a studio environment. We were being taught to be employees when we wanted to be business owners, if that makes sense. And this is kind of an issue I have with education as a whole, really, is that they teach us to become employees, not necessarily individuals. And this is kind of like when I do guest lectures at universities, or when I go into colleges, or various speaking events, if I'm speaking to students or young, impressionable people, I say, don't ever allow yourself to be put into a box, because if you want to be a business owner, you have to constantly think outside the box. And that's one thing I think we didn't do as an early successful business, is we tried to follow the mainstream sort of approach that, that traditional companies that you look at from the outside were doing really well. Like, we did everything. We did influencers. We did press. Like, we did trailers, and like we sent it to people. That's great, but at the end of the day, like, the market's either going to buy it or it wasn't. And there were some factors that were outside of our control, like a pandemic happened at the time, which that did play a huge part in what happened, like with the business all those years ago. But ultimately, I think a big thing that we would have learned a lot from is having more wiser sage counsel from people who really understood what it is that we were trying to do and really understood that side of it as well. And it's difficult as that when you're a business starting out, when you haven't got investment being pumped in, or you're trying to get a publisher for your game, and it's just not the right time. You get the same excuses, it's a great product, we want to sign it, it's just now is not the right time. So you're having to do a lot of that with your own back. But I think one thing we definitely could have done is just really finding those key business mentors to work with and that can really assist you on your journey, because I have a business mentor for Format that really helps me on a day-to-day basis, who just gives me advice. And everyone's always saying, like, you come across as like this hugely independent guy. And yeah, I back myself. Like, I know I'm good at what I do. I know I'm insanely good at what I do. But even the most successful people like need advice, and they have people that they can lean on for support. So in your infancy stages, find the right people, because ultimately you are a collection of the people you spend the most time with. I believe it was Steve Bartlett who said that you are an accumulation of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I'm a firm believer in that. And if you're going to set up a business, 90% of the time, people you're surrounded by are the people you set that business up with. So you better damn make sure that you get someone who understands what it is that you're trying to accomplish surrounded by you.
Yeah. You don't know how much that resonates. Like, I started April 1st, my business, but I've been in like 6 cohort coaching programs. So on LinkedIn, you might have seen a cohort. So it's like you basically get group setting where you talk with a mentor. So I've done that like 6 different times. People who help with personal branding, some who've helped with speaking, sales, all of that jazz. And then some of those, like 3 of them went to one-to-one coaching for me. And now I'm working with 2 of them, which help me in my business. That is pretty much the only reason I'm like doing any form good. Like you, I back myself, but you don't know what you don't know. It's such a good quote. And like, there's so many things where I spoke to 4 different ghostwriting agencies, and all of them had very cool things which I weren't doing. I merged them all together. But then on the next call, I shared, here's what's happened. And then that agency was like, oh, I'm stealing that. That's very cool. Because they weren't necessarily doing that, even though they were successful. So it is a constant thing that's super useful. Just constantly chat. And what you said at the start is very important. A lot of this can be free. Like a lot of this, if you just put time into like have that coffee chat or just network, like you say, a lot of people will give you a lot of time for free. Like, for example, this Thursday, I'm doing a live. So this is after the recording comes out, but I'm doing 90 minutes on LinkedIn with Ali Faha, roasting profiles. And I will give the same advice I would give on a paid coaching call. But these things and opportunities are out there. I think Amira Satvat has a very good example. That spreadsheet, I've recommended people looking to join the industry to go on that, because if you send 100 messages, you're going to get 5 calls. And those 5 calls could change your completely change your life. It's massive.
It is absolutely. Outreach and being there in person is so key for this. So I go to every event that I can possibly get to.
Really?
Because
every single one?
Not every single one. I haven't got time for that.
I'm curious, like, how many events are we doing? Are we talking a year? Because this sounds like a lot.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, everyone's always running events. I'm actually part of a huge event organisers call where we all kind of get together and we say, right, listen, nice. We don't want to trip on each other's toes. What dates are you all planning? So we all make sure. And because today, again, oversaturated market is that there's always something happening, but that's also a benefit of you starting a business. There's always something happening. Like, I'm going to Gamescom later this month, like getting my ass out to there to be able to get that side of things done. There's other events that are happening. I'm going to an event the week, like a 2-day event the week before Format Liverpool, because there's business leaders there that I have to network with. Like, I physically have to be in the same room as those people. But people like, it's a week before like your biggest festival. Like, are you insane? I'm like, yeah. But as a business owner, I've got to think those people are in that room. I can secure an additional sponsor later down the line, or I could secure an exhibitor or a client for our client business. And this is the burden that you take on as a business owner, is that you will struggle to switch off. Like, your business becomes part of your identity. I do think as I've got older, I really do push the message of be kind to yourself. Like, at the end of the day, like, remember that you are a human being. And I think that people, as entrepreneurship and business building has become more oversaturated, key voices in the industry as well, who I think have become a little bit more toxic than they should have done. Like, it used to be all about building your business, like everything, it needs to consume your daily life. Whereas I think we forgot that you should work to live, not live to work, because ultimately, what are you working for if you're not living? Which is, I fell into that trap myself. I used to be this grind mentality guy. Like, it was literally like listening to a Gary Vee impersonator every single day. Like, you need to hustle and grind like every single day. But then I found, well, what am I actually grinding for if I'm not spending time with my family, or taking time to actually go travel the world, or do all these things that I'm working hard for to begin with anyway? And it can become a bit of a disease, which is why I'm constantly like telling people, remember what it is that you stand for, your brand values, and remember why you started this to begin with. Like, most of the business owners I knew did it because they wanted to provide for their families, but then they work all the time and they don't spend time with their families. So which is why I don't go to every single event now because I remember that I also have a life outside of my work, but then I also prioritize which events I go to. So in terms of events, I do prioritize what events I go to. Like I can't be at every single one, but I try and go to as many of them as I can because a lot of stuff there is free. Like where you would sometimes pay to go to a certain conference to meet someone, these people are at these other little events that you've never heard of, and you can get access to them free of charge because they're free meetups or free little get-togethers. Like really learn where the people that you want to target go to, whether you're in hospitality, recruitment. I imagine from a recruitment standpoint, I mean, recruiters are in every industry anyway, but the type of clientele that you were after, I imagine, was it game specific that you were after?
Yeah, just basically all the big gaming events. I was curious. You said, I have a few questions here because I love me some networking, but you just said, learn about these small events. Go on, you're going to spill the tea. Like, is there any small events that I should know about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that, well, it's not really small, but a lot of people don't hear about it. Is Scottish Games Week, which is fantastic. Like the best of the games industries, best of the games industry in the UK is in Scotland. Rockstar. We've got all sorts of big companies up there, and people don't think about it because everyone's always like, "Oh, it's all in London." It's like actually, the biggest companies in the UK are in Scotland, and they've got a huge week-long conference. You've got Games Talks Live, where all these big companies go to there. That a lot of people don't hear about Games Talks Live. You've got the likes of Gamebridge in Middlesbrough, where you've got like the big like Double 11 guys up there. You've got the Radical Forge guys who run that side of things. There's a small event called Format, the Ultimate Gaming Social. You might have heard of it. I've heard the guy who runs it's a bit of a dick, though, personally. Like, you might not want to go to that event. I'm joking, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, Format sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it does sound sort of familiar. No, do come to Format, though, if you listen to this. You will enjoy
when is that event?
Yeah. The Liverpool one is September 26th. And another great event I do have to shout out is the guys at Game Republic as well in Yorkshire. Like, if you are looking for those networking events, they're the events to be at. Fantastic. The guys at Game Republic do an amazing job. Do go to that. There's all these small events that you hear of. Like, there's the Bristol Games Meetup. There's Guildford Games Festival that happens in Guildford, which is like, there's so many of them you don't think because we all just think EGX, Gamescom. Like, no, like there's a lot of these there's a lot of these smaller events that you can be going to.
Every single one of those events I haven't heard of before. And it's my job to go to events as well.
Never heard of Gamescom, have you? I'm quite disappointed, Harry.
No, that one I've heard of because I'm going there. Calm down. I meant the small ones. But that's really cool. I'm clipping that because that needs to go on LinkedIn because I'm sure a lot of people don't know about those events. But it's super cool because you mentioned some of them are free, which I think some people forget. Like, not everything has to break the bank.
Oh, no, absolutely. Like, Guildford Games Festival is completely free. And you can go speak to big studios there. Like, if you're a member of Game Republic, like, you get access to all their events for free. I think it's like a yearly subscription, and you get a behemoth of events for free. Like, those guys do insane levels. Games Talks Live, like, depending, obviously, like, there's certain events that you can get to there with those guys. If you're a student, like, you can get access for education partnerships. And there's just so many amazing events out there that I highly recommend to people. Amazing.
I want to, if you're up for it, share our networking strategy for Gamescom.
Okay, absolutely. So I always have a strategy. I think I said this to you when we met in Develop Brighton. My big strategy is the best deals are done at the bar. I find out where all the business owners are, and you can clip that. That is a quote that I will never have anyone steal from me. The best deals are made at the bar. Okay, so I find out where all the parties are. I find out, like Develop Brighton this year, I didn't even go on the expo floor. I literally used it to walk through it to get to the meeting sectors or to where I knew people were. Like, I didn't go around the expo floor because I know that the majority of the time that the people I want to speak to are not there. They're in meetings or they're at events. And that's my strategy is I find where the key people are. Obviously, a lot of these events do tend to have like official meeting systems. And I'd highly advise people to take advantage of that because there might be a key figure that you really want to speak to. And if they can book an official meeting with them, like, please do it because obviously their time's going to become more valuable. And obviously you don't want to pin it completely on chance that you might get to chat to them at some event. So if there's key people you want to target, try and put meetings with those people as early as possible. But most of the time, go and find out where the people you want to target are hanging out at these events and be present there. Because like something like Format, like, we do a one round, the showcase floor where we try and eye up what games are. So our COO, he was playing the games at Develop Brighton. I said to him, right, go find out what games would work very well at Format. So if you can delegate that, that's absolutely great. But most of the time, find out where the people you want to speak to are. And that is my strategy for a lot of the events I go to is I find out where the people I want to target are hanging out. I go there. Or if there's some sort of meeting system, I book meetings with people. But at the end of the day, if you're a business owner, you're there to do business. Like, you're not there, it's not a holiday. Like, obviously enjoy it, like try and enjoy it as much as you can. But if you're trying to get some real return of interest on your time for going to this, because ultimately that's another thing about business that people forget is your time costs money. Like, it's the biggest time, actually the biggest interest I would probably say is that think how many hours that you're spending on something is that return in the interest that you need it to do ultimately as a business. And as you're first starting out, you're going to sacrifice your time because obviously time equals money. But when you're at events like this, you need to prioritize your time. So yeah, that is actually a talk that I've submitted to multiple conferences. Is that it's a talk that I have here on my computer that I like to do. Is it's called a Games Industry Survival Guide for attending events, and it breaks nice. Down because you don't actually see any talks about going to.
Have you done that talk yet?
Oh yeah, I've done it before.
I've done it. I was going to suggest we do it on LinkedIn Live because
I'll do it on LinkedIn Live with you because there's no recordings of it yet. So if you want,
because if we do it on LinkedIn Live, we can make it engagement, and if we do it potentially before Gamescom might be a stretch, but like that could be very interactive.
Liverpool. I think that could be quite a good one to do right before Format Liverpool, the Games Industry Survival Guide to Attending Events.
Yeah, that would be sick because I would love to give a talk on that. I gave a talk on LinkedIn branding, our Nordic game, and I really enjoyed it. And it was impromptu because there was like, hey, do you want to give a talk? It's like, sure. And we did like an hour of Q&A and everyone was like, what? Because like everything you've just said, I can assure you, because I've been to these events, people do not have a strategy. They roam the floor, they book 1 or 2 meetings on Meet to Match, and then they're like, great, now what?
Yeah.
And some of them think the expo stops at 5 p.m. and they go home and like, no, that's when it starts. No. You go to honestly, the parties.
No, the parties are the best bit. So when we went to develop Brighton, I had a whole list of every event. Like the itinerary was insane. Like our COO was literally like, we've not got enough time for this. And we're right, we didn't have enough time for everything.
You had to pick and choose, exactly.
It was literally like, right, we'll spend 20 minutes here, we'll go here, and like you can get lost in that. But ultimately, time is money at these events. And I had a strategy. I was like, we're going to target these events. I'm going to have these meetings at these times. Whatever free little bit of time we've got in between these events, I'm going to try and book a meeting in between the events. And there was literally I was never not doing anything at Develop Brighton. It got to the point where some industry mates were like, oh, you're off to another meeting, like kind of sarcastically. And in my head, I was like, why aren't you?
Yeah, like, it's like, oh, wait, you're doing work? You're making me feel bad. No, not necessarily. But I feel like it's some of that vibe sometimes, you know?
Yeah, it's like, why are you here if you're not working? Like don't get me wrong, I love catching up with people. Like, I love it. Yeah. Like, if I see you at an event in the future, I'm like, Harry, how's it going, mate? Let's grab a quick drink some point soon. But ultimately, we're business owners. We've got to prioritize our time. And if there's a big publisher that I need to speak to about maybe getting some client work or maybe even being able to, like, you know, be able to get them as an exhibitor at Format, then I need to be at that meeting ultimately to be able, and because everything I'm doing is for the business or for our attendees or for our clients, absolutely everything. And just prioritize that. I'm rambling here a little bit, but yeah, I will absolutely do a LinkedIn Live with you about the Games Industry Survival Guide to events because a lot of people don't have a strategy. And I think having that handbook, if you like, presentation just helps people really come to formulate how to maximize their time at events.
And making it less daunting as well. I'm doing the Gamescom strategy for my clients now because a lot of them didn't have a strategy before. And yeah, a lot of it is just like being a lot less formal with your invitation messages on Meet to Match. That's a massive thing. That's helped a lot. So being, yeah, I'm sure we can talk for hours on that. But like the messages you get on Meet to Match.
I hope this email finds you well and you are having a lovely week. I would really like to please take advantage of your script writing services about how we can incorporate this into our... Just say, I've seen your stuff. It looks cool. Can we have a
question
chat?
Mark. Literally. My calling card, I've started using it. Just coffee question mark after saying something that is clear that you've looked at their profile. Like, hey, the one tip I would give, which has worked really well for me, so I always book out on Meet to Match. I'm pretty much booked. And I attribute it to this one little bracket I put. I say, I appreciate you're very busy based on your schedule. No worries. We can meet at a party or at an event.
I'm sure that's how we met, wasn't it? I'm sure you... Because
I sent probably that message.
Yeah, you sent play develop, I remember. But then I was like, our stuff is clashing. Like, it actually worked out better. You were just like, listen, here's the events I'm at. Let's chat. And again, bringing it back to my point, the best deals are made at the bar. Like...
Yeah, and now we're having a podcast and we're chatting. And it was because I opened the door for that to be a possibility. So it's not as crazy. And people, some people might not accept your invitation purely because of logistics, but they might want to chat to you. But they're not going to be the person who's going to go through and really follow up because people got a lot of stuff to do. So if you give them that opening to do that, it's game changer.
Absolutely. Like, believe it or not, that everyone's always like, how do people reject meetings with you? Like, because sometimes what I'm trying to offer them doesn't align with their schedule. But I often found that when people were saying they couldn't meet me on Meet to Match, they were saying, but listen, one of our people or our team is going to be at this event, or they're going to be on the show floor. Do you want to meet them as a substitute? And then they can relay it back to me. And that's what I did. And we've secured another sponsor format Liverpool just off that back. Like, literally. We had a separate meeting with one of their staff. They took it back to them. Then they had the actual person I wanted the original meeting with made some time for me the following week, and we have another sponsor.
Yeah, perfect. Lovely. So I'm going to park networking because I feel like we're going to go into that deep on that live. So yeah. I want to talk about the other parts of the business because this is very interesting because I feel like it's very hard to make a profitable event business. I feel like that's a statement that is just true.
Very hard.
And it looks like you've managed to get the attention and traffic that you had from the event business. And then you've kind of used that to market these services, which are a lot more higher margin, which I found very cool.
No, absolutely. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I initially was always planning to just build an events business, but big thing for me is that I love branding. Like, I love brands. Like, my two babies are behind me, my two biggest inspirations. So you got Format there on one shoulder, Nike above the other. Because what Nike have done is when people think Nike, most people think clothing. I don't think clothing. I think about all the community activities that they do. I think about the agency side where they offer fashion services to some of the biggest brands in the world. They have their own merchandise for like water bottles and all this other. They do agriculture work. Like, did you know that they do agriculture stuff? Nike.
My green screen's gone down. That's fine. I'll leave it.
Oh no, not the green screen.
No,
there you go. Nike,
I'm a fraud. It's not a curtain.
Yeah, you don't have real pictures behind you like me. You're fraud. Yeah, no. But Nike's one example. Another one I can think of, Red Bull. Red Bull's probably actually a primary example. Like, Red Bull are not an energy drink company. Do not mistake yourself. They are not an energy drink company. They have esports. They have Formula F1. They've got so many arms to that business. And I applaud Red Bull. Whatever your thoughts of them are, I don't care. What they have built is phenomenal. And this is what a lot of the best businesses do, ultimately. They pivot it. They use the initial thing that they started off and did really well and pivot into other sectors, which is kind of what I always really wanted to do with it because there's so much stuff we wanted to do. Like, we launched our own clothing line this year. Next year, I want to do a fashion show. Well, we're already launching more clothes in October. We're launching a new range. I can say one of them. We're even launching bomber jackets and bags, like everyone. But from that, I want to do a fashion show, format fashion show. You wouldn't think that from a games industry brand because no games industry events ever do their own fashion shows. But I want to do that because ultimately, gaming is such a diverse like array of so many things. Like, and some game studios try that. Like, some game studios do try and implement other industries into their stuff. But ultimately, that was kind of one of my aim goals, was to build so many different arms of the business. The agency side allows us to work on cool client projects. I'm announcing another one in 2 weeks' time that we're working on. Last year, we did a commercial with Rezzle, who are an augmented VR reality studio, where we got to literally make a Nike ad for them, which was insanity, being on an actual set with like models and sports people. Like, I worked with Britain's #1 female boxer and one of Britain's #1 NFL players. Like, awesome. Yes, we do have NFL in the UK. And that's just an exciting arm of it. And you wouldn't think that, look at it. We are rebranding our main website later this year to really reflect this sort of stuff because we've just had so much to talk about. And then we've just used that to branch out into things. But to bring it back to your original statement, setting up an events company is very difficult because, as I highlighted earlier in the podcast, sorry, my glasses keep slipping down. I imagine this is really... It's super hot here in the UK for anyone who's listening right now. And I'm sat here in a black jumper for branding purposes. And I'm absolutely sweating, so my glasses keep falling down. For anyone who's watching this thinking, why does he keep touching his face? That is why. You probably didn't even notice, and you're going to notice it now every time I do it. To bring it back to this, what I mentioned is that a lot of events, they rely on kind of, depending on the type of event, and sometimes they don't even have this many avenue sources, but the format, for example, the main event, like we've got kind of three main incomes: sponsorships, tickets, and exhibitor fees. But say you're running a B2B conference event, you're probably just relying on sponsorship and ticket sales. And if it's a free ticket event, it's literally sponsorships. And you've got to think about your outgoings, like production. Are you paying the speakers to be there? Like, so many variable factors. And then you've got to think about your net profit on that. And then you've got to think about things like the lovely little things like tax. How much are you actually taking away? Like, how much time are you spending on this stuff? And that can get really difficult. And it breaks my heart because events are the backbone of any industry, whether it's recruitment, TV, film. Like, it's how people get together. It's how your community comes and flourishes together. But yet there's almost a love for events, but almost like a kind of taking them for advantage approach I've found throughout the world. Like, you would notice if they left. but you don't appreciate them when you have them. I've often found this thing. Whereas someone in the event sector, we appreciate events because obviously we live and breathe this stuff. Like, we absolutely love it. Obviously, I've got multiple arms to the business, but events is where I started. And I love events. Like, I love the magic of events because they're a journey. Similar to video games. The reason I love video games is to take you on a journey. I've implemented that same methodology into my approach when I design an event. But a lot of the time, events are the backbone of any community or any industry. I don't know what it's like in recruitment. Do you even have like recruitment like festivals and stuff? I imagine it exists as a festival for everything.
Yeah, there's something called RecFest. I've never been. I've been the one to go to where the clients go, but there are events.
Yeah, and you would notice if these things are not here. That's why I'm always pushing for people to support the events, like really support them. Whether if you're a big brand and you got money, like help sponsor an event, like you'll get that return, whether it's from brand awareness or whether you want to do that. Because, or if you're an attendee, go to these events and support them, because a lot of the time you will notice if they're not there. Yeah. It's just that obviously I had the foresight to recognize that we needed other arms of the business that we can pump additional stuff back into the overall arching and group of the format group.
I feel like events, I'm painting the bridge, the analogy of like a YouTube channel, because a YouTube channel could rely on its own on ad revenue, but it'd be a lot more sustainable if you use that traffic to then take it to a product. And I feel like you've done this a little bit here in the event kind of example. And I wonder, is that a bad thing? Like, should an event business be okay with breaking even or losing a little bit of money, but then using that traffic to push that into high margin services? Because then in my head, that would make the event stay like the events that you like, which is the ones which are less capitalistic, like we said earlier in the chat. Yeah. So I wonder, is that just not a viable strategy?
I think it depends on the business and what you're ultimately trying to achieve. So for me personally, I will agree and disagree with what you're saying. So I get that there's other opportunities that could come from doing an event that breaks even. But then, as I mentioned, you've got the time of your personal time. You have to think about events. Unless you actually organize an event, you don't understand how consuming it is. Like, I've just been given a bit of coaching, mentorship to someone organizing their first event, and it's going to be fantastic. Like, I know it's going to be a fantastic event. They've gone all out for it. Kudos to them. I can't say who they are, but I'm very excited to go to this event. But they came to me that I'm spending like 6 hours of my 8 to 9 hour working day on this thing, and like we're only just breaking even. I'm like, well, that's the question you got to ask yourself. Like, actually, this is a perfect way to answer this question. Like, I'm saying, well, are you trying to make money off this? Like, what are you trying to ultimately aim for it? And they've said, I'm trying not to reveal too much because I don't want to reveal like what their ultimate aim is, but they're like, but there are other things that we will benefit from this. So for them, that works because that can tie into other things. But if you're wanting to make money off the event and you think that that's not viable, then you either need to change pivot and capitalize on your event a little bit more to grow it. But I don't think that you need to become capitalistic to organize a good event. Like, even if you do like a corporate event that is designed to make money, you can still make that event fun. It's that, to me personally, I feel like a lot of people put profit ahead of customer, which at that point, there's no point in even doing an event. If you're purely an events company looking to do events and you prioritize profit over customer, eventually your events are going to get... Can I swear on this thing, or are you going to bleep that out?
You can swear.
Yeah. Eventually, your customers are going to think your event is shit. Like, and they're not going to come back. And then all that excess profit you made, that's going to go very quickly. Whereas if you did the actual value for the consumer, because what you remember is they're paying money. They're investing your time. Like, your customers are ultimately an investor. They're investing in you to give them the return, like that experience that they want. And if you're not facilitating that, then you better hope you have other arms of the business that you can rely on, because otherwise that's not going to do it. So I realize that hasn't answered your initial question,
no,
which is it's a very open-ended question. It depends on what your ultimate business aims are and what your goals are. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Like, for other arms of the format business, like, I would potentially maybe do like one of our reformat industry mixers and break even if it meant that we got clients from the people that attend that. But format the ultimate game and social, absolutely not. Like, this thing is a colossal amount of time. Like, there's 25 game studios. It's an expo in one night. It is literally an expo. Like, you've got music performers, you've got esports, you've got content creators live streaming, like all these conversations that we have to have behind the scenes to make all these moving components of the event actually happen. That's a lot of time and a lot of overtime on my time a lot of the time. Like, the way I see it is I've sacrificed a bit of money with the extra time that I spend putting into this stuff outside of my work hours. But obviously it depends on what your ultimate aim is. Like, I'm very transparent about this stuff. Like, businesses need to make money, and it's a double-edged sword of, you have all these great ideas and you want to stay true to your purpose, but then you need money as a business to operate. You do. Like, I meet some event organizers like, oh, you actually charge for tickets, don't you? Like, do you not think that's a bit like, no, I don't, because I'm providing one hell of an experience. I'm providing the ultimate night out, mate. You're getting a rave, which some people pay 50 quid just to go and listen to the music. You're getting live music performances. You're getting content creators, esports, video games in that environment. Like, you're getting a memory like that. Effectively, that's what you're getting for it. But yeah, sorry, I'm diverting here a little bit from the original question. Is basically, depending on what your business model is and what you're hoping to achieve, I think it depends. If you can calculate that ROI and guarantee it, then maybe doing a break-even event is good. But sadly, events need to make money to survive, and it's too often. And I'm probably getting a little bit heated over this because I meet so many good events that just break even, and it makes me really sad because they deserve to make money for their time. Because eventually, and I've seen this happen before, is that someone has a really great event and they just get burnt out because they don't see that return of interest, and then they just don't do the event again, and it never happens. It's shame. And again, you notice them when they're gone, like you do. You don't take them for advantage when they're there, but you notice them when they're gone.
I think what you mentioned about focusing on that customer, because they become returning customers. And I feel like with events, that's everything, right? And to get a returning customer, you need to be fun, but you need to have money to actually put on the next event. So my question here is a practical one. Like, could you take us behind the scenes of organizing that massive event? Like, how do you make sure it scales, makes money, but also it stays fun? Because you're doing two things at the same time, which some could argue go against each other. When you have a bigger event, maybe it's going to be less fun.
Yeah, of course. So my approach to format is that ultimately we're not an expo and we are not a conference. We are a nightlife event for the games industry. So from that, there are multiple elements. So obviously it operates like, if you break down the event to its absolute core form, it operates similar to an expo. Like, you've got game showcases. Okay. But then how do you transform that? And a lot of that is about journey. So I come from a game design background. So my unique perspective in game design probably enables this to me. I plan excessively the journey that I want to take my attendees through from the minute they walk through. And I call it the Skyrim effect. For anyone who's ever played like Skyrim or a Bethesda game, they always have it where they have you start out on something, you exit, and then they introduce the world to you. And you have this big, whoa. That's a similar approach that I take with events. So from that's how I'm able to maintain that sort of community feel to it. I never rent out, even though I never rent out these big empty halls that you just find, because it creates dead space. You want to create a social atmosphere. So for Format Liverpool, we've got 2 warehouses. Now you're thinking warehouse and thinking, well, surely that he's just contradicted himself. No, because they're nightlife venues, fundamentally built for nightlife events. And when you add things like the showcases in there, you add the esports zone, it's going to create a healthy flow of traffic that's going to force people to engage with the event. Like, put it this way, you physically cannot experience everything at Format. You will not be able to play every game. You will not be able to watch every music performance. You will not be able to pay unless you want to do a speed run of it. And I challenge you to do it, because I would love to see someone try and speed run a Format event and try and do everything that the event has to offer. And I would love that. I would absolutely love it if someone actually proved me wrong on this. But I heavily curate the experience. And obviously we have to make business. So what I do is I go out and find sponsors that can either tie into our reformat industry mixers that can, from the B2B side of it, or I try and find people that align with the main event itself, whether that's a game studio, a publisher, a brand, an esports organization, music. Like, we have brands that you would fit. Well, for example, we've got an audio production company that sponsor our events based in Canada, and they're flying over from Canada to attend the event. Now, people think, why do you need an audio production company when you've got a venue? Well, these people want to scout clients out. So they're paying us money for that access to be able to come and basically get access to all these companies. Sorry, I'm diverting away from your original question here. Sorry, I'm one of these people, I like to waffle when I explain the process, because it's such a huge process that goes into this. Because I understand what our initial brand values are and what I'm trying to achieve with this event, I know what I don't want it to become, if that makes sense. I know I can't say what the end goal is, but my worst fear for this event would be to become one of these huge capitalistic events that maybe one closed down earlier this year. Maybe, I don't know. I won't say much about it. But when you go to events like that and there's a lot of dead space, why is there a lot of dead space? Because they're not providing any real value to the people that get involved. They're overcharging because they're hiring these huge spaces that they don't ultimately need, because people just want to have a fun experience. And that's at the core of what we do. And yes, we have loads of brands. Like, we get funding from the Liverpool Council to do what we do, but we tie all that into what we're trying to achieve, and we try and maximize that as best possible. We're a business ultimately that has to make money. Like, we have to make money on this. Is this answering your question, or am I diverting?
It is. We've got a couple things there. We've got the dead space is a huge one, because I've been to a few events this year where it's like, yeah, you could fit like 5 times the amount of people in there and you still wouldn't necessarily bump into people. Now, from Harry Foku's perspective, it was still okay, because I'm the type of person who would go up to you and be like, hey, nice shoes, let's chat. Like, I would actually force that to happen. But for the average person, that much dead space, it's work. It's like a lot of mental energy to actually start conversations when it was happening more naturally, both playing a game at the same time. It's just a better experience. So second that, fantastic. And I love the Skyrim analogy, because I can picture it very well. Because sometimes you go to a conference, like, to be honest, Bright and Develop, interesting experience. When you go in, you're like, okay. And then it takes a long time to find that conference area. And then it takes a long time to go to the meeting match area, which is a completely different space. It's obviously just logistics. That's happened to be the layout of the hotel. But I can imagine that you would have designed that differently if you wanted to.
Oh,
right?
yeah. So obviously you've got limitations of the space. So how I've designed format Liverpool, for example, and I'll share some insight. We've got 2 warehouses that you're going to go into. I'm calling one the crazy warehouse, and I'm calling one the fun warehouse. So the fun warehouse, I'm putting all like your single player games, all like your stuff that you can sit down and kind of consume. And there's like even the music artists are in there, like Afro beats, R&B, like people who are quite chill out. So then the crazy warehouse has got like your rave, like your DJs that are going full out, lasers, everything.
I need to get this date in the diary, man. Mate, what's the date again?
September 26th. But if you want, mate, I'll put you on the guest list for the VIP industry mixer as well.
Yeah, because this is fun. I might bring someone, because this sounds like a good time.
Everyone on this podcast is like, wait, do I just have to invite him on a podcast to get a ticket to the VIP? No.
Try it and see what happens.
And if business leaders want to reach out to me and come to our industry mixer and network with key business leaders, like, that might be a conversation for us to have, Harry, if you know business leaders that might want to come. Yeah,
that is a conversation we will have, don't you worry. I cut you off because I really wanted to get that date. So 26th of September, that's really cool.
25th is the VIP, which is our reformat industry mixer, which a lot of people always ask where they can buy tickets. You cannot buy tickets to this thing. That is the USP of it. It is, you have to be invited, which is why a lot of big brands sponsor us, because they know they're getting access to the key decision makers that they want to speak to. Basically, imagine an exclusive event where it's business owners or heads of departments or CEOs. That's what you want to be in the room with effectively a lot of the time at these events. And then so that's the 25th. And then we've got our main festival, which is on the 26th of September. Then we've got the after party on the 27th as well. The after party is a little bit more chill. Like, people turn up to that really drunk and basically just continue to get drunk. Right? But it's a 3-day-long festival, effectively. Like, I used to be really hesitant on calling it a festival. Like, people have had to drag that out of me. Like, I didn't ever used to want to call it a festival because I had a definition. It's like entrepreneur. I never used to want to call myself an entrepreneur, but I've warmed to it over the years. I used to call myself a businessman, which I used to have a bit of a negative stigma with the word entrepreneur. But
what was the stigma with festival? I'm curious.
Because I have a definition of what a festival is. Like, when I think of a festival, I think of the likes of Glastonbury. I think of the likes of stuff like that, basically. And I think format is I back it. Like, we are Europe's biggest games industry nightlife event. But to me, a festival is like, multi-day sort of thing. But ultimately, we are a multi-day event. It's just that you're not there in tents. And frankly, I wouldn't make people sit in tents. I don't.
Sounds like a better festival, Simran.
Yeah, effectively, and it's in the evening. It's 6 till like 2 in the morning. Some people don't even leave till 4. Like, we've literally had people stay from like 6 till 4. Like, they just don't want to go. Like, it's just like, it's
a good sign.
Yeah, and then you got the after party. So I've been warmed up, but I call it the ultimate gaming social as opposed to a festival, because I think that perfectly conceptualizes what format GG events are.
Amazing. No, I've been missing out clearly, because I did. Yeah, this is just too cool.
Mate, go on the website, type format.gg, and the video sells it. Like, I don't even have to. The thing is, you know how you pitch to clients? Like, when people ask what format is, I don't even tell them. I don't even give them an elevator pitch. I literally play on the video. I'm like, this is it.
My pitch is show the Notion board of my client work. And then they're like, this is what happens. Do you want to start? And they're like, yes. It's a lot easier when you just show them what the actual thing looks like. Fantastic. So before we close out here, just curious, is there anything you'd share that we haven't covered today that you really want to share to potentially aspiring entrepreneurs, or anything that you want to cover?
Yeah, of course. I suppose for me would be 3 pieces of big advice I like to always end on. So for anyone who wants to embark on the journey of entrepreneurship or business ownership or business leadership, understand that a lot of the time, this is going to start off in negative, but I will turn it into a positive, because this is from my personal experiences, that it can be a very lonely journey. There are incredible highs, and then there are incredible lows at certain points. And I often find that all business owners, like you see, like the people we look up to online, like there are people that I look up to, and I know deep down that they'll have their own dips and dives as a business as they do that. Okay. It is not an easy journey. So please don't become oversaturated with thinking that if you start out and it starts to get like really tough, that's fine. All businesses go through tough areas. It's how you approach that and manage it. So please understand what you're getting into before you sign up to it, because you need to do all your research beforehand. Like, you need to understand who your core market audience is, and you need to understand that there's going to be failures and successes along the way, but you've just got to persevere through them and adapt and survive. That is the law of the animal kingdom. You adapt and you survive. And it's the same in business. So remember that. My core second thing would be, please network. I meet so many people who don't like networking, and this is one of my more blunt things that I like to say. If you don't network, you're not going to succeed. That is ultimately how it was. You need to go out and talk to people. Unless you are that 0.1% of person who launches something, it becomes a multi-million-pound success overnight, and you can hire people to do networking on your behalf. 99.9% of the time, you're having to network, and it'll help you grow as a person. You'll meet different industries, you'll meet different people, and that will pivot you as a business. Businesses change all the time. You started off making footwear. Now look at them. Look what the Red Bull was an energy drink. Now look at them. Like, they literally got only arms. So I really encourage people to network, go to as many events that you can as possible, and please just try and forge meaningful business connections at every single point. And then number 3 is ultimately understand your core brand 5 core brand values. Understand who you are as a business, because if you don't understand your identity, how can you expect others to understand you?
I like that. 2 solved number 1.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you network, you don't feel lonely, because it doesn't. That's a thing we can have in control. The thing we might not control is the troughs of business, but we can control what we do with that, which is, I love networking. It's just too fun. Yeah. It's too fun. It's too useful. It's everything. But I appreciate why it's scary, which is why we're going to be doing a LinkedIn Live event later so whenever that comes out. Lovely. Simran, let's close off. Where should people go to find out more about you or to connect with you?
Yeah, of course. So for those that want to find out more about me personally, I'm very active on all social platforms. So I've literally got everything from LinkedIn, X. You can find me as Simran Whitham, super easy. Like, there's no daft usernames, at Simran Whitham or Simran Whitham on everything. Super easy, accessible. And I'm always open for a conversation. If you're a business owner that wants to get involved with our events, or you're looking to promote your brand, you're looking for creative services, get in touch. And then if you want to get in touch with Format, it's format.gg, where you can find out and get in touch with us.
Amazing. Simran, thank you so much. Really enjoyed this conversation.
No, you're very welcome, Harry. It was a pleasure to be here.